if everything else faded away in your business and you can only focus on the top 3 to 5 things, what are those things? What are the kinds of ways you want people to show up? What's the kind of impact you want to have? Start a brainstorm around that and see if you can identify some values-oriented words to start with. And if that doesn't work, sometimes the opposite approach works. If you kind of get in through the back door, which is start with a list of things that really annoy you in your work. Start with a list of things that really tick you off, that really rub you the wrong way, that when they happen, a value is broken.
Welcome to the Culture Club, conversations on gym culture and the future of physical fitness.
Well, thanks for having me today. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, you're sort of the prototypical guest for the Culture Club in the sense that we're trying to spotlight successful pioneers of physical culture and or subculture, and what you guys have been doing for. How many years has it been since you started Mark Fisher Fitness?
Yeah, I mean, next year will be 10.
And so you and Mark, you guys go way back. People can check out the TEDx that kind of gives the story of your meeting through community theater and all that. But do you want to give just a sort of a quick overview of how you guys teamed up and what your different roles are within the organization?
Yeah, for sure. So Mark and I do go way back to high school, really. We've been friends since we were teenagers. And in the organization, when we really started in 2011, it was really, Mark was the fitness guy and I was the business guy. It was that black and white. And over the years, our roles have become a little more fluid. But that was really how we started. My background was in kind of a nonprofit business, and Mark was an actor who kind of did training on the side until he realized it was really his calling and his love. And so we really started Mark Fisher Fitness together in 2011, and it's been an amazing journey.
So the Culture Club, the idea, the premise of our whole podcast and our whole project is that the missing ingredient for a lot of gyms is values. And so this question of how do you come to attract a community? What is the role of values in bringing people together in these so-called third spaces? And what attracts me to your model is that there's this element of gym culture for people that don't subscribe to gym culture in a way. It's an alternative to this world of the obsessive, maybe borderline body dysmorphic bodybuilder, or people who get just so their lives center around exercise, and that kind of cult of exercise is being broken and widened into a community that sort of gets off on being a little bit outrageous. So how does that look? I guess I should ask. Right now, we're in this unusual period. What's going on with your community during COVID-19? You're right there in the sort of the epicenter in New York City.
Yeah, totally. Both of our locations are in Manhattan, and it's been a fascinating journey. But I love that you brought up values, because I think I'm confident in saying that we're one of the few gyms I know where our first meeting about turning MFF into an actual business started with a conversation about values. And in part that was because, Mark has always been a values driven dude, but my background in the nonprofit space kind of required me to come from a values perspective, because anyone who's worked in the nonprofit space knows that most 501c3 organizations really start from a place of values and impact and defining those things very clearly before you do anything else. And so that's really how we created Mark Fisher Fitness. And I would say the values that we started with from day one of things like inclusiveness or humility or fun or candor are not words often associated with gyms. Often they're places that feel very cliquey and intimidating, where people go around with a lot of ego and not a lot of humility, where there's not a lot of fun, just a lot of hard work and sweat and sometimes pain. There's not a lot of candor. There's a lot of people go there and hide with their headphones on on a treadmill, not really addressed, not even being candid with themselves. And so I do think that's helped us stand out and help us create an environment at Mark Fisher Fitness that's different than what I'll call a, kind of a traditional gym environment. But I will say that we're not the only ones who have been focusing on that, which I'm really grateful for. Since we've been around the last, about 10 years, I've seen a real shift in the industry in that direction to make the fitness spaces be more inclusive and welcoming to people of all ages and shapes and sizes and gender identities and races. And there's still a long way to go in many of those categories, but I've seen a real movement, especially in small, kind of what I would refer to as like boutique, privately owned fitness studios. I think they're the ones really leading the charge there. I think some of the big box national brands, while they're good at some things, I don't see them leading in this way, in the way of creating a culture that's really open and representative. And so I don't remember exactly. Oh, then you asked me about COVID. Sorry, I could just ramble about values for hours if you let me. But yeah, COVID in New York City has been quite a journey. We could talk more about it. I have so many things to say, but we still don't have an open date here in New York. We're just in phase 1 with no indication of when we will open again at the time of recording this podcast. And so who knows? Who knows what the final impact will be? Because I'm not sure how much longer we'll be closed.
Right. So has the community been able to stick together in other ways? Are there virtual workouts?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, great question. I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but if anyone wants to know more about the details, just go to markfisherfitness.com/online, and you can see there we've been toying around with online products and services for a few years now, but because of COVID, we had to kind of jump into the deep end of the pool. And so when this first started for us, which was really mid-March when New York really shut down, March 16th specifically, that we created an online class option we call Homebody, where people can take online Zoom classes. And so we've had a really strong community of nearly 400 people stick with us during COVID and continue taking classes online, in addition to buying some of our other products. And what has been so heartening about that is that while people certainly come to us for fitness and results, during this time, we've heard more and more that people are really appreciating coming to a fitness class just for connection, just for human interaction, just to feel seen and heard and supported. and that's like more valuable than ever. So yes, they're getting good workout. Yes, they're maybe getting the results they want, but perhaps even more importantly right now is that they feel like they belong to a group of people who care about them and see them, and that they can also have some fun with.
It does feel like the gyms that will stick around through the great sort of sifting and reset that's happening with COVID will be the ones that provide something in addition to just the physical space. Now that people are starting to see that sort of physical space as a potential liability, you have to really double down on the value offering. And that term gets thrown around a lot in different ways. But if we're talking about kind of the core values of Mark Fisher Fitness, I think I was listening to another podcast of yours where you listed 3 of them. What are the main values?
Yeah, well, we have really at this point kind of 2 sets of values. So I won't kind of bore you with all of them because what we decided at one point was that we really wanted to have one set of values that represented what it means to show up as a client at Mark Fisher Fitness, which we call Ninja. We call our clients ninjas. So we wanted to define like a set of values that say what it means for us to be, for what we think it means to be a client in our community, what it means to be a ninja. And so that's one set of values. Then we have a separate set of values that's really about what it means for our team to show up every day. So when we talk about core, we call them core ninja values. Those are things like self-awareness, personal integrity, intentional community, beautiful movement, growth mindset. Those are kind of 5 that we really think of as being things that are really like kind of crucial to being part of our community. You got to have the self-awareness, and the phrase we put with that is that I honor how my body feels today, and I run my own race. Meaning that we want people to show up into our space and into our community having self-awareness of how do I feel today, how do I show up and interact with these other people, where it's not an environment of competition, where it's an environment where I'm really being in a race with myself to challenge myself in a way that feels good and productive, and I'm going to leave here feeling better than when I came. And that's not always an attitude that is encouraged in a fitness space. And so that aligned with other things like, personal integrity, beautiful movement, growth mindset, it's really kind of both inside and outside approach to values in the space.
Talk a little bit more about that idea of growth mindset, because this has been a trendy topic, and I think there's a lot of substance to it. When you're an organization that is trying to reach people and make a difference, growth has to be a part of the equation. You can't just keep it to yourself and your co-founder. If you're fortunate enough to have a co-founder, you have to actually bring people through the door. So there's a curve, and there's a mindset, I guess, that accompanies this curve of growth, whether that's personal development or if you're trying to grow a business. So for people who are unfamiliar with that term, how do you define growth mindset, or what's the sort of 60-second summary version?
Yeah, I'll try my best. Yeah, I think the 60-second summary is the growth mindset is, for in our context, is the belief that you are capable of change, that you are capable of improvement, that you are capable of believing and thinking and feeling and doing different things from one day to the next. And the short phrase that we attach to that is that I get better, I get 1% better every day. I get 1% better every day is kind of the mantra behind growth mindset and Mark Fisher Fitness. And we've been using that for years, and that's really impactful for ninjas. I don't need to give 110% today and leave here having lost 5 pounds even this week, right? I just want to get 1% better every day. I want to challenge myself and push forward just 1% better every day. That is progress. And sometimes people think that it's not enough. So we want to encourage people to, small incremental progress is the most sustainable when it comes to changing your body. And so believing that you can make small incremental progress that will accumulate to big goals is a big part of what we do.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Albert Einstein or someone who said that compound or exponential growth is the most powerful force in the universe. So that idea of imperfect progress eventually adds up to quite a bit. And in your case, it adds up to a successful business that's making a pretty big impact in a lot of people's lives. So you have the two physical locations, but then you guys also do some sort of business consulting, or what's the second plank of your
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. So about 3 years ago, Mark and I started another business called Business for Unicorns. And it really came out of so many people in the fitness industry and frankly, broadly kind of the service industry, but with a focus on health and wellness, reaching out to us, just being like, how'd you grow so fast? How are you managing this team? How are you doing what you do? And so about 3 years ago, we just started answering their questions. And a few questions turned into, well, I should probably get paid for my time, turned into a workshop, turned into a course, turned into a series of courses, turned into its own business. And so it really started from that place. And so now we're doing it for about 3 years. And we do two main things at Business for Unicorns. That's really where I spend most of my time these days, is Business for Unicorns. Because I've been kind of a certified professional coach for almost 8 years now. And so I've been doing this a little on the side, but in the last 3 years, it's my full-time gig. And we do two main things. We do courses, now all online, and they're mainly for managers, leaders, entrepreneurs on big topics that we think are crucial. Things like managing a team and workplace culture, things like time management, things like coaching conversations and being a great coach, things like marketing and sales. So there's courses that we offer, but then we also offer a series of kind of coaching options, one-on-one, some group coaching. We have a specific group for fitness industry leaders called the Unicorn Society. And those are people who committed to working with us for a whole year on their business. So that's been really fun and so powerful, because now the last 3 years, I feel like I've gotten a really great kind of bird's eye view of the fitness industry. And it's really helped me make improvements even at Mark Fisher Fitness.
And your bio describes you as a facilitator. Before anything else, before entrepreneur, the first word in there that I noticed was
Mm-hmm.
facilitator. So
Yeah.
talk about the kind of division of labor between you and Mark. What are your relative strengths, and how do you, in any sort of business relationship, determine, what that division of labor looks like?
Sure. Well, I'll say it's, the first thing I'll say is it's grown and changed and evolved tremendously over the years. So it's, for the first thing, it is that it's fluid. It's not static. And I think that's a big place I see partners um, holding themselves back in so many ways, as they think, if I would have stayed the business guy and Mark would have stayed the fitness guy all those years ago, we never would have learned about each other's kind of quote side of the business. We really would have been doing ourselves a disservice. Not that I'm still not a certified personal trainer, and I have no desire to be, frankly, but I've learned so much more about the fitness side of the business over the years, and I have strong opinions about the customer service components, about the methodologies that we use at Mark Fisher Fitness. And similarly, Mark has grown tremendously as someone who cares and has a lot of opinions and thoughts about the operations of the business. And so the fact that we've allowed our roles to be fluid, and that, I think we probably assess our roles every year and they kind of continue to change slightly, especially now that we're running two businesses together. That's been an ongoing conversation. And I think that's important, is that it has to be an ongoing conversation of evolving roles over time. I think the second thing I would say to partnerships and how you define roles and responsibilities is that, and Mark and I had this from the very beginning, is it has to be built on a foundation of real trust. And I don't mean like, yeah, I like them and I trust them. No, I mean like, I wouldn't partner with anyone that, I wouldn't really trust my life with. And I don't take that lightly. And Mark and I we put a lot of years in together. We've known each other since we were about 15 years old. And so I know in every conversation we have, he has my best interest in mind, and he knows I have his best interest in mind. And so from that place, we're allowed to experiment and explore what our roles can look like, because we trust that we're both still in it for the right reasons, and certainly that we share this core set of values that we share with not just the two of us, but with our whole team. So no, those are probably the top two things I would say to partners in terms of division of labor. Is it's got to be on a foundation of trust. And all too often I talk to partnerships that are just not. And they're often based on convenience, which is not a good reason to start a partnership. And then secondly, I think is this ongoing conversation about what roles and responsibilities can be over time as your life and your preferences and your knowledge and your business evolves. So too should your roles.
You're bringing me back to my high school theater days, where a lot of my closest friendships, people that I still cherish to this day, and the relationships were forged in that crucible of the stage and all the work that goes into putting on a production. And I don't think it's a coincidence that one of the more successful alternative fitness businesses comes from a duo that has such a strong theater background. And it almost makes me surprised that there's not a stronger nexus between theater and fitness. Maybe there is. I assume Broadway actors,
in my world, yeah, in my world, it seems like there is, but I know that's not for everyone.
Sure. And the actors that you see, and whether it's in Hollywood or on the stage in Broadway, that, they definitely are mindful of their bodies and take care of their bodies in a way that the general population doesn't always. And it's interesting how, you talked about beautiful movement, that performative element of, whether it's dance or just the motions that you're going through in a theatrical performance. There's different techniques. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the Alexander technique and things like this, where you have a whole pedagogy that's built around the stage. So does the value, this is kind of a leading question. I'm just going to lob you a softball here.
Go for it. It's okay.
How does that value of, the production value, the sort of showiness play into, and I don't mean that in any sort of derogatory sense, but the showiness of a business play into building a strong community that has an identity?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I feel like I could answer it on so many levels. But I think first, for any of your listeners who are like, what is putting on a show even like? Why does that matter? Why is that such a crucible of an experience? Why is that such a bonding moment for people? I just want to speak to that briefly, because I know there's probably some listeners who are like, yeah, I don't know what that means. I think it's the equivalent to being on a sports team. Is that, often people who are on teams together go through intense practice and rehearsal. And even before that, they've maybe done a lot of work to just get on the team that they've, auditioned. Is that what it's called in sports? I don't think so.
Tryouts,
tryouts. I don't know sports, but I'm trying to make an analogy. But you do all this work to even get on the team or in the show. And then there's all this rehearsal process that's intense. requires all this vulnerability. There's often feedback given in the moment. So in sports, there's a coach yelling at you, and you have to learn in front of your peers how to be vulnerable and work on your shit. Oh, sorry, can I curse on this
Oh,
podcast? Work,
yes.
yeah, work on your stuff. And in the rehearsal room, in putting on a show, yeah, it's a director and a choreographer, all these people giving you feedback in real time, which is tough and vulnerable. So you go, and then you play a game or you put on a show, and so it's a whole cycle of experience you go through with people. It's a very bonding. And I think that that taught Mark and I so much about how to create community, how to collaborate, how to give and receive feedback well, how to have a thick skin about feedback, how to lead with our values and care deeply about the work with other people. Frankly, it taught us a lot about how to choose the right people for your show, how to choose the right people for your team. And so there's just so many lessons in those things. And again, you hear athletes all the time talking about how they transitioned from being an athlete to a leader in some business, and they brought all of those kind of teamwork skills with them. I think the same is true for theater. I think the extra flourish that we get in theater is, example by this background behind me. If some people are going to watch this by video, giant glitter background behind me, which is not an accident. It's kind of part of our brand, it's part of our DNA. This kind of showmanship. In fact, Mark Fisher Fitness's tagline is ridiculous humans, serious fitness. And so we are ridiculous, fun, playful, showy humans who are really serious about fitness. And that playful part is not just some branding. It's not a coat of paint we slapped on at the end. It's just really part of the experience is that we want to create a place of play, a place of vulnerability where people can come and work on becoming the best version of themselves and get 1% better every day. And that wasn't an afterthought, and I think that's, I think part of what has, I hope, been obvious to people who follow Mark Fisher Fitness is it's genuine. the glitter's real. The unicorns as our mascot is something that means something to us because we know how rare it is, this thing that we're creating. I got unicorns in my living room. It's not just a meme for us.
I'm speaking with Michael Keeler of Mark Fisher Fitness and Business for Unicorns, two organizations related in their mission, but that have broken some of the, maybe we could call it the fourth wall of fitness,
Good
in
analogy,
terms
yeah.
of getting the audience to participate in a different way. Where in theater, if the actor breaks the fourth wall, it just means that they're starting to kind of talk to the acknowledging that the audience is there. In another interview, I was speaking with a gym owner here in California, in Sacramento, called Body Tribe, Chip Conrad. I don't know if you've ever come across his work, but he's another really excellent and thoughtful philosopher of fitness and strength. And he talks about this idea of like the dancing monkey syndrome, where a coach or a trainer will get into the habit of just performing a movement or sort of demonstrating it in a way that doesn't actually provide the teaching. And so when it comes to the actual pedagogy or the teaching methods, what would you say that you differentiate yourself from other gyms, other kinds of fitness classes where, and related to this, I think, is a question of accountability, both ways, both the clients in relation to the teachers, and then the teachers providing accountability for the clients.
Yeah, so I think, it's a great question. I think when it comes to, specific fitness conversation about, how we approach program design or how we choose one, kind of, workout over another, I think that's probably a question better for Mark to answer. But generally, the way we think about our approach to fitness broadly is there's one thing that's always been front and center for us is that we kind of lead with heart, and we really actually try to give a shit about each individual person. I think one of the skill sets that our trainers have that I see lacking throughout the industry as a whole is the skill set of actually being good at coaching skills. And when I use the phrase coaching, I come from a background I mentioned earlier of being a certified professional coach. So I'm talking about a series of conversation and communication skills that include things like acknowledging and mirroring people, like validating people's feelings and experiences, like asking really great open-ended questions, helping people really find meaningful action steps to get them closer to their goals, and really useful, compassionate accountability that helps people stay on track. And that series of skills, which I refer to as coaching skills or coaching conversation skills, I think that has a lot to do with our approach to fitness, because frankly, and I think Mark would agree with this, you can go lots of places and get a good hit workout. You can go lots of places that do mostly, kettlebell workouts, and we'll also do some private or semi-private training. I don't know that our approach to fitness is that different than other places you'll find who are doing what I would think of as quality work. I think the biggest differentiator for us is, yes, our brand and our ridiculousness and our sense of play and our fun. But I think at the heart of it is these coaching skills that all the trainers on our team learn, that help build connection and loyalty and vulnerability and progress and accountability into our relationships with clients. And I think that's part of what I'm trying to spread as a message in my work at Business for Unicorns that we've been doing for a while at Mark Fisher Fitness. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that was my reaction.
So as a coach, you're mirroring people and you're asking open-ended questions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can say more about those skills if you want, but I think, there's probably a handful of coaching conversation skills that I teach in a course that I think are really useful. It starts with really great listening and understanding what good listening looks like and sounds like, which requires practice. We could probably do a whole nother podcast about that, but I'll stop there. Includes things like, interrupting in conversations so you can actually reflect back meaningful packets of information. You're not letting your clients kind of talk forever and ever and not able to grasp it all. So interrupting, acknowledging, and mirroring back, validating feelings to normalize people's experience so they don't feel broken or crazy or weird for having their experience. That's crucial. Open-ended questions drive the sense of curiosity in our conversation with clients. And curiosity, in my opinion, is kind of the opposite of judgment. So when our team is staying really curious with clients, we're avoiding that possible judgment of their choices or their beliefs. And then I think, the most important two things that people come to us for are great action steps, great programming, and great accountability to keep them on track and have good conversations with them when they're not on track. So that combination of skills plus a slew more that I could talk about are just like really essential to creating what we call a service culture, a culture where we are really of service to other people, and we support that by having really great communication skills with their clients. At least that's our goal. We're imperfect. I don't know if we get it right 100% of the time, with all humility, but that's the approach.
Well, we won't make you give away the entire course for free. We'll leave some curiosity for people to go and check it out. But I will ask what your conversations are looking like these days when you're consulting with other gym owners, and what kinds of problems, concerns. I'm guessing there's a fair amount of anxiety right now, just given the uncertainty. I think in
Yeah.
California, we just had the opening date for gyms was yesterday, but I know
Mm.
that a lot of gyms are still proceeding with caution. And this is really a crisis and an opportunity. So what are the ways that you've found people are struggling in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it. The biggest struggle I hear is some version of uncertainty. That's so hard for leaders. It's so hard because so much a part of our job as entrepreneurs and business owners is trying to predict the future, trying to decide what's going to happen next week, next month, the next quarter, next year. And we know that so much of being great at running a business is looking ahead and having a long-term vision. And in the absence of those things which leaders need and rely on, it's really hard to know what to do next. So I see a lot of folks just struggling in that position of just kind of frozen, like, okay, well, if I can't plan, then what the heck do I do? How do I spend my time today? What are my priorities this week when I'm not making my schedule for, or doing a forecast for, or whatever these these things are we do, these planning activities we do. Without those, what do we spend our time on? And I found the folks who are most successfully navigating this moment turn all of that planning attention just back to their community, back to their clients, back to paying even more attention to how they take care of their team and their clients. And so that means many of them who I see weathering the storm, the most successful are the ones who jumped online right away and pivoted right away to finding new and innovative ways to take care of their communities. And the ones who have been making individual calls and outreach to every single client they have to make sure they're personally okay, that they still have jobs, that they haven't been sick. So I think the folks who I see who are going to make it through this storm, I won't say unscathed, but in a best position they could be in, are folks who have turned all that anxiousness and fear about the uncertainty turns it around into productive action in terms of taking care of their team and their clients. And you can never go wrong when that's your focus.
I've started to see more people outside in New York, at least on the news. It looks like people are getting outdoors. Do you think there's an opportunity to bring some of the classes outdoors, or have you experimented with that?
Yeah, I know a lot of folks who are doing that in other places in the country. Though in New York, that's very difficult. Most of our outdoor space are state parks, and require a lot of permitting and things, which I understand right now they're not offering any permits for things in the park. And so unless people in New York just want to go renegade and take over an empty parking lot or take over a sidewalk, there's only so many opportunities for that, especially to do it legally. And right now, we don't have a legal approach to that. Once we do, I think outside can be really great. I know a lot of folks who are in states that have gotten further along to reopening, and they're really successfully incorporating outdoor into their overall service offering. The challenge there is that that too just is unpredictable. If you're not used to having to deal with weather, and the conditions outdoors, and your team's not used to programming in an environment that doesn't have all the toys and equipment that they're used to, that's also a challenge for some folks. So I think there's kind of a fine line to walk for some folks as to whether or not an outdoor offering could work for them. But I will say I've seen a lot of people who are doing it well, and some people that it's just not an option for.
Sure. Yeah. Let's bring it back to values. And you said something earlier that I think is one of your mottos, and it's the subject of that TED Talk where you and Mark are on stage in your capes, and it's a great presentation. Everyone should check this out who's
Thanks.
listening to the podcast. But you talk about leading with values. What does
Yeah.
that actually look like when you're starting the business, when you're running the business?
Yeah, great. Well, I'll give you kind of a quick little, I don't know, it's a few step process that I recommend often when people are just starting off and they want to start figuring out what their values are. There's kind of two ways to go about it. The first step could be just writing down all the things that you care about the most. If everything else faded away in your business and you can only focus on the top 3 to 5 things and make that kind of impact in your work, what are those things? What are the kinds of ways you want people to show up? What's the kind of impact you want to have? Start a brainstorm around that and see if you can identify some values oriented words to start with. And if that doesn't work, sometimes the opposite approach works. If you kind of get in through the back door, which is start with a list of things that really annoy you in your work. Start with a list of things that really tick you off, that really rub you the wrong way, that when they happen, a value is broken. That when they happen, you are so mad because it goes against something you believe to be true and real and important. And I think that list of gripes and complaints, on the flip side of them, on the opposite side of the paper, could be a list of values of things you really care about. And when those things don't go well, you're not happy. So I think start by brainstorming that list. And then really the second part of that is really making sure that that list of things is not just some dusty old poster on the wall. It's not just something you put on an intranet that people can glance at during their onboarding, but that's it, right? Your values have to be represented in your space. They have to be represented in your meetings. They have to be represented in your conversations. They're represented in your systems. The values have to be woven into the fabric of your culture. And when they're not, they feel hollow. They feel shallow. And that takes real effort on the part of leaders to make sure that the values are constantly brought up and people are reminded of them and people are taught what it looks like to embody that value. Not just theoretically or principally what it is, but what does their job look like when they are leading with humility, for example, or dependability, or they're leading, or they're really embodying the value of candor or excellence or kindness. These are the few that really matter at MFF. And so getting clear on what is the action that lets everyone know that that value is important to you, that's the kind of final key to making sure that values really
I
matter.
like that exercise of coming up with the inverse values and your annoyances. Uh, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about one of the things that we've made a centerpiece of the Culture Club's uh, community, and we are giving a PDF away that is a series of exercises for people who want to drill down deeper into their values. And one of the questions, first couple questions, deal with honing in on those values. And then we ask, how does that translate into what you do in the gym? I'm a MoveNat trainer, natural movement. And so a lot of what I do is sort of outdoors, And I think the medium is the message is sort of a short way of saying what you just were talking about, with having it permeate every aspect of the business. And if it's just a stale old poster on the wall, then it won't really have a chance to permeate in that same way. The question that I have from this is, what are the what are kind of what are a ninja's chief annoyances, or what are there certain tropes that get trotted out as sort of the common enemies in your community? Or
Oh, interesting. You mean enemies in terms of like things that people don't like about our community, or outward facing, like the things our community doesn't like about the world,
yeah,
or
and
both?
we run the risk of getting into too negative of territory, but I do think that this is an important aspect of values, which is what are we fighting against. Obviously you have to know what you're for,
Mm.
but if you also have a sense of sort of what you're against, that is another way of approaching it. And since I hadn't thought of that before this, now
Yeah.
I'm thinking about adding a question to our exercises. But
Yeah, I think that's a good one. You're right. You don't want to press too far in this direction, because then it just becomes gripes, complaints, and it brings up a lot of negative energy. But I do think that, just like the exercise I suggested, that on the flip side of your values are things that you don't like. On the flip side of your values are times when your expectations are not met, and your emotions get high and you get angry with people, and it's important to recognize what's on that opposite side. And I think, broadly speaking, it's also useful to think about how your values position you in your industry. So without going too far down the rabbit hole, my glitter background probably gives out a lot, but the majority of folks who are ninjas at Mark Fisher Fitness identify as LGBTQ. So we have a huge queer community at Mark Fisher Fitness, and part of our values align with this overall sense of inclusivity, in part because our industry is one that has not been very inclusive to queer folks in the past, not to mention other oppressed groups. And so that really is part of what, broadly speaking, we're pushing back against in the industry, and that our community really has a strong reaction to, is places that have a real strong kind of, for lack of a better phrase, kind of like bro club mentality, where a lot of gyms you walk into and it's just all dudes with all muscles, been working out their whole life, and they don't have a lot of time or interest in dealing with the person who's brand new and really scared and uncomfortable. Which, there might need to be places like that, but if they're all like that, and there's no room for people who have never been to a gym before, and they're walking in for the first time and they're 40 years old, they have no idea what to do, and they have a lot of shame and resistance, and are confused about what even is all this equipment for. So I think, broadly speaking, what our values are trying to push against is that sense that not all fitness spaces are for everyone, and even we have a lot of work to do to get better at this. I think we're really good at addressing it for kind of the queer community, but I know we're not, MFF does not look as diverse as New York City in a lot of other categories, and so we have a lot of room to do work, a lot of work to do there. But ultimately, I think that's broadly, I think, what our values are trying to push against is that a lot of fitness spaces are really not welcoming, not fun, not inclusive, not a lot of kindness, not a lot of candor, not a lot of glitter, and I think we all need a little more glitter in our life.
Well said. And again, it comes back to this value of imperfect progress, where if you hold up perfection as your model, you'll never be able to get anywhere near there. But if you allow a little bit of flexibility, you can get incrementally closer. And I do think that it's interesting how you guys have been I think the pioneers of physical subculture that's getting people who maybe are going to build physical subcultures that look very different from yours to think more critically about what are their values that are translating into specific strategies inside the third space that will resonate with people and that will bring them out of their shells, let them move in ways that are less self-conscious. And I think that this is another thing where I'm thinking of theater, and in particular improv, where you have to inoculate yourself against the fear of looking like an idiot or kind of making mistakes. And I had an improv teacher who would tell us that whenever we made a fool of ourselves, just to go woohoo, throw up your arms, and that sort of thing can also apply. If you screw up a lift or something like that, hopefully you're not to hurt yourself. But the idea that when we
Yeah.
come into a space where maybe we're wearing slightly skimpier clothing, just to fully embrace that. And I've seen a lot of leotards in your promotional materials, which
Yeah, that's accurate.
form
Yeah,
form
that's
follows
accurate.
function, though, and that's a,
Yeah, no,
the
it's practical
spandex. Yeah.
and fantabulous all at the same time. Yeah, no, I think your point is well taken. I think that I'll zoom out here for a second and tell me if this is too much of a rabbit hole, but I think we just really in the fitness space, and this probably goes for all health and wellness spaces, we have a real obligation, I think, to make our spaces feel inclusive and welcoming, especially to people who are brand new to working on themselves in that way. In part because in the U.S. our healthcare system is crap. Really, fitness and health and wellness spaces are on the front lines of the American healthcare system, whether we've chosen to be or not. And so when we have whole populations of people, whether they're Black or queer, other people of color or trans folks, that when they are not welcome in our local gyms, our local yoga studios, our local places where they can go work and on themselves to be healthy and well and learn how to take care of their bodies and their minds, and when we're not welcoming those folks in, we're contributing to this awful system that our country has. So I think it's really our obligation to make sure that our doors are open to people. Differently abled bodies are not hardly ever welcomed in gyms. I can't remember the last time I saw equipment in a gym that was appropriate for, that was specifically designed for someone who was in a wheelchair. Or, even here in New York, there's plenty of businesses don't even have ramps, and a lot of gyms, get away with it. So anyway, this is a rabbit hole and maybe another podcast entirely, but I do think in our space, again, we're not perfect here at Mark Fisher Fitness. We have a lot of work to do, but we have a real obligation to have our work be accessible to all people in all the ways that we can. And so, yeah, I'll get off my soapbox for a second.
I'm curious to know what the conversations are looking like as you determine what will need to be in place before you're comfortable opening up the doors again. I tend to be sort of a little bit dovish on some of the COVID risks, but I also recognize that in some parts of the country, especially in New York City, it is a real risk, and for people of all ages, but especially the most vulnerable. And that's where that idea of kind of call it the preferential option for the vulnerable, or to take Rawls' idea of sort of the veil of ignorance, or he had that term for I'm blanking on it, but it was basically the principle that we should structure society in order to be most friendly to the most vulnerable, basically. John Rawls, the philosopher of justice. And so I think that there's a fine line, and I don't think that it has to be perfect in order to open up. I don't think that we need to get to 0 new cases before we reopen. But what do those conversations look like, and how are you thinking about implementing different precautionary measures and balancing the risks of security with the risk of just never reopening? And there's a whole lot of risks that come with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I would say, first and foremost, my approach is, and I know I speak for Mark here too, is that, we have opinions about these things, but we are not experts in coronavirus or any of the things related to these things. So in many ways, we are, looking to experts and leadership. And the first thing I'd say to any listeners is, and this is my own personal opinion, you can go tell me to F myself, but I think it's important to follow the guidelines established by the area you live in. And I think that's not just important because they're always right, because they're not always right, but it's important because I think from a client perspective, they're going to be looking for the places that are, quote, doing the right thing and going to be the safest places for them to return back to. And so I think making sure that you stand out from the crowd in doing the most you can to make people feel safe to come back is going to be important to get them back in your doors. We did a survey of all of our community just a few weeks ago, and we have heard from our community that only about 20% of them plan to come back, quote, right away. Others are going to wait a few weeks or wait a few months. And the only way we get that number up is if we really over deliver on making the experience of coming back not just okay, not just safe, but maybe even better than the experience was before in some ways. And that's a tall order. I don't know that we'll get there, but that's part of the way I'm thinking about it. The other thing that I've played around with, this is a little bit silly, but I think it's useful, which is I don't want to open Mark Fisher Fitness until we can have what I call Grandma Day, until we're all comfortable inviting all our grandmas to come and work out for the day. And we think all the systems are safe enough that all our grandmas are going to come and they're going to be perfectly healthy afterwards, and no one's going to contract COVID. That until we're comfortable doing that, I don't think I want to let anyone in. And we have a really detailed, rigorous plan we've been working on. And in part, we've been shut so long, we've had a long time to work on this plan, and who knows how much longer we'll have to refine it. But we have a really detailed plan, and I think we'll do that. I think when we'll open, I'll be comfortable having Grandma Day and inviting everybody's grandmas, and maybe after a few test days, but that's the bar we're setting for ourselves, which is a high one. But we passed over, I think, 20,000 deaths in New York City.
Hmm.
20,000 deaths in just a few months is insane and so sad, and so the responsible thing to do is just to honor those 20,000 people who died, and make sure that we do our best to be part of the solution.
Go F yourself, Michael. I'm going to show up at your gym, and I don't care if you're going to
Yeah,
open the door. I'm going to, no, it's, I
yeah.
love the bring your grandma to the gym day. That could become the new bring your daughter or son to work day. It's a, intergenerational, that's another value I think that, that can be incorporated into gyms, and
Yeah.
the research on, who benefits the most from strength training and things like that. It is the older people who are vulnerable to falls. And so I think breaking down this conception of, who is a gym person, and that's what you guys have been doing. You describe yourself as, sort of a gym for people who don't love going to the gym.
Yeah.
We're kind of coming to the close of the interview. It's been great speaking, and I want to give you an opportunity to kind of go over anything that we have already covered, sort of in to summarize some of the bigger points, and then to close, just if there's any particular movements or quarantine exercise routines that you've been finding particularly nutritious or fulfilling in this time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that there's much that I need to say more about. The one thing that I failed to say, I think, in talking about values and all that earlier, was that I think is so crucial, and it's just came to me since we stopped talking about it, was that the creating the values in your business is not something that two leaders go in a room and do together. Creating the values for a business, something you do in partnership with your staff, if you have them, with your clients, if you have them, even early on, if you're just starting the business, still working alongside in collaboration with the people who are going to be part of your community. I think that's really crucial. I didn't say that earlier, but that's certainly been the case in FF. In fact, our values have grown and evolved because of feedback and input from our team and from our community of ninjas. So I want to say that because that's really important. But I don't know if there's anything else I have to have to add. In terms of COVID, anything great going on? Let me think. In terms of movements or food, yeah, I mean, I'll just share personally that New Yorkers are not known for cooking at home very often. We eat out and do takeout pretty much every day, and it's one of the things I've enjoyed during this period is just cooking at home more. I love to cook, and it's allowed me to explore a lot more recipes and get creative with food that I haven't been able to cook in a really long time. And so I think if for anyone who's still quarantined at home, I would say challenge yourself. I mean, more than ever, learning to cook is still a barrier for a lot. For a lot of adults. A lot of people just have no. But now is the time to learn that. It's such an important life skill, and it's so interconnected with your ability to take care of yourself. MFF, we use shorthand for this to say, to learn about your own health and hotness, is so interconnected with food. And there's one gift of quarantine is that many of us are home and we have time. So exploring your relationship with food and cooking, I think is really remarkable. And there's no excuse. There's so much free resources, just, more food fitness videos on YouTube than you can watch in a lifetime. And there's creative, fun ways to interact with your food. And so I don't know, that's my one pitch, because I'm not necessarily a trainer, but I do love to cook.
Awesome, and I'll put in first a plug for something, a resource of my own that I've been developing. It started off as just sort of a a little manifesto called Poor Man's Paleo. I'm sort of the paleo broadly persuasion, but bring it into sort of the 21st century and recognizing that we're not going to be going out and hunting mastodon or living in caves. And I've got a new shopping list combined with just some simple preparations for people. You could say it's the cookbook for people who don't like cooking, or the recipes for people who don't think of themselves as cooks. And then I want to just put in one more plug for your businesses. There's Mark Fisher Fitness for people who are looking for a great community to belong to, in addition to getting a workout there in New York City. And then also Business for Unicorns, which I'm guessing would be the place for gym owners and people who are trying to maybe hone in on some of these questions and resolve some of their issues in this unique opportunity that we have right now to reset our business. Are there any other
Yeah.
places where people would go to check out what you guys are
Yeah,
doing?
no, I think that's it. If you go to Business for Unicorns, you'll see there's a lot of the courses we're offering the rest of the year. They're all online now, and in fact, we slashed our prices just to make them more accessible to people who I know are stuck at home and wanting to do some continuing education. And there's some stuff that's specific to business owners, but we get a broad swath of folks who are not in the fitness industry who take our courses. So whether you're in fitness or not, if you want to learn more about time management, coaching conversations, building a team, creating a great client experience, check it out. They're broadly applicable. We don't just talk about fitness. And then for Mark Fisher Fitness, I think that URL, markfisherfitness.com/online. So even if you're not in New York, come check out some of our online services. We're a fun, lumpy bunch and our arms are always open to new people.
If you enjoyed this interview, sign up for the Culture Club email list to get strong values, 6 questions to unstupid your gym's culture, clarify your values, and surpass your goals.